Alright guys, Dominic here for Kit Guru, and today we're actually looking at what has proved to be my favourite mouse of the year so far. It is the Razer MAMBA HYPERFLUX with the FIREFLY HYPERFLUX mouse mat. So essentially what this is it's Razer's attempt to create a wireless mouse that doesn't have a battery. Instead, you connect the FIREFLY to your PC over USB, and then the MAMBA will receive all the power it needs from the mousepad using magnetic induction. So there's two main benefits to not having a battery in a wireless mouse. The first is weight. The MAMBA actually weighs only 96 grams, and Razer says that is 29 grams less than if the MAMBA actually had a battery. The second benefit is the fact that the MAMBA will never actually run out of power. There's no having to recharge it every now and again once the battery is drained. Instead, if the MAMBA is on the FIREFLY is plugged into your computer, it will get power, no problem. In practice, there are a few things to point out. The first question that popped into my head was, well, what happens when you lift it up from the mousepad if all the power is being transferred from the mousepad to the mouse via magnetic induction? Surely as soon as you lift it up, the mouse is just going to turn off. Well, Razer actually included a super capacitor inside of the mouse, so you can lift it up and probably for up to 10 seconds it will still be powered, depending on how long it's already been sitting on the pad for. And what that means is you'll easily have enough time to lift it up, reposition it, or whatever you're going to do, moving it from one spot to another, and it's not going to turn off. So obviously that's not a problem there. In a similar vein, if the mouse has been off the mousepad, so it's lost all of its power, once you put it back on the FIREFLY, it will actually take a couple of seconds to power on again. So depending what you're doing, just make sure you leave it on the pad and you won't have any issues having to wait for it just a couple of seconds to power back on. Interestingly, in use, I also found you have to make sure that if you are using the MAMBA with the FIREFLY and the FIREFLY is plugged in, you have to make sure that you keep the mouse itself within the little rectangle of the mousepad, otherwise it won't receive power. For instance, if you knock it off here to the side with maybe the top edge of the mouse hanging off, it won't receive power. An easy way to tell is Razer has thankfully included a little LED underneath the Razer logo, and that will light up, and you can pick which color you want it to light up in the software, but that will light up when the mouse is receiving power from the mouse pad. Similarly, the FIREFLY itself also has a LED strip at the top, and that will also light up to let you know that the mousepad itself is receiving power from your computer. Of course, that does mean, if you hadn't already guessed, you do need to use the MAMBA HYPERFLUX with the FIREFLY HYPERFLUX to use the mouse wirelessly. Because there's no battery, there's simply no other way for the mouse to get power other than using the FIREFLY HYPERFLUX mousepad. You can actually use the USB cable that connects to the FIREFLY. You can plug that in to the MAMBA because there's a small USB port just here, so you can use the mouse wired. However, if you do want to use it wirelessly, you have to use it with the FIREFLY. The FIREFLY does have a neat trick up its sleeve, however, in the fact that it is both a soft and a hard mousepad. Simply put, you just need to flip it up here. There's Razer's incorporated a small detachable bit, and on one side you have a hard pad, and on the other side it's soft, so you can choose your preference. I definitely prefer soft pads, and the soft pad itself feels really good, so it's really good that Razer's gone that extra step to give you the choice. So that's been a quick overview of the HYPERFLUX technology and how the whole thing sort of works. Now we're going to actually move on to the mouse itself, its shape, design, the clicks, etc. So starting with the shape, I've compared it here to the DeathAdder Elite. They're quite similar mice. The MAMBA is slightly smaller. Its edges are also slightly less curved, which I personally preferred, but the overall shape compared to the DeathAdder Elite is similar. And you've also got on the left hand side 2 side buttons as well as 1 profile button at the front, as well as some rubber side grip, and on the right hand side there is more rubber side grip. Now at the top of the mouse, the primary buttons both have comfort grooves for your middle and index finger, which I really like, and the clicks themselves are quite snappy. They sound and feel really good, and they're both quite uniform, so that was very impressive as well. The scroll wheel is actually really good. It's probably my favourite scroll wheel so far. It's got really distinct steps, and if you can hear that, it just sounds so good. It feels really good as well, and it's actually surprisingly easy to click in. So a great scroll wheel as well, and just below that you've got 2 DPI buttons, which you can of course configure in the software. So on the underside, it's also worth pointing out we've got 3 mice feet, 2 at the top and 1 at the bottom, and then the sensor is smack bang in the middle. Razer hasn't confirmed what the sensor is, however it is more than likely to be their top end PMW 3389, which is in turn based on the PMW 3360. Now again, as I mentioned, you can use the Mamba as a wired mouse, and to do that you need the cable, which is just over here. So it's a 1.8 meter long cable, it's braided, and while it is slightly thicker than the DeathAdder Elite cable, which incidentally I think is probably the best cable on the mouse I've ever used, it's still really usable, it's very flexible. It's not quite as good as the DeathAdder Elite as I mentioned, but still, if you do want to use the mouse out and about without the FIREFLY, you can plug it in and the cable didn't cause me any problems. Lastly, we of course do need to touch on RGB lighting. It is 2018 after all. The Mamba has one RGB zone here, the Razer logo, there's also the scroll wheel at the top, and then the FIREFLY has a row of LEDs going around the outside, so you can of course choose between various different effects using the Razer software. The overall effect is very impressive, and of course if you have other chroma devices as well, perhaps a Black Widow keyboard, you can synchronize all of those together and have a lovely coordinated light show. So that's a look at the design. How about performance? Well, we'll start off with the issue of wireless latency, and I can say it's absolutely a non-issue. I did not have any problems using the mouse wirelessly. I couldn't notice the difference between using it wirelessly and wired, so that just goes to show how far wireless technology has actually come. The sensor as well, top class. I had no issues with it. There was no unwanted acceleration, no angle snapping or anything like that. I was able to game just fine. So the sensor coupled with the shape as well, which I really like, it fits my hand really well for palm grip, made the Mamba an absolute dream to use on a day-to-day basis. Lastly, just for a quick look at the software, when you open Synapse 3, this is the new beta version, you've got 4 main tabs at the top. There's Customize, Performance, Lighting and Calibration. Starting off with Customize, this is obviously where you can remap the various buttons on the Mamba HYPERFLUX, and each different button can be remapped to various different functions. It's also worth noting Hypershift, which lets you add on a secondary layer of extra functions if you want to effectively double the amount of commands you can map to the mouse. In terms of performance, you can choose up to 5 DPI stages, and these are adjustable in increments of 100, and you can also choose the polling rate over here on the right hand side. Now moving over to the lighting tab, there's a few quick effects to choose from, including breathing, reactive, spectrum cycling, static and wave, and you can also make sure you apply those to other chroma enabled devices plugged in. There's brightness settings over here. You can also choose the color for the power indicator, which is the little LED strip underneath the Razer logo, which lets you know that the mouse is receiving power. And you can also tell the mouse to turn off its RGB lighting if the display is turned off or if it's been left idle for a certain number of minutes. Lastly, if you want to get really into it, there's a few advanced effects you can choose from, or you can create your own in Chroma Studio. The final tab is calibration, and here you can effectively just choose if you want to use Razer's pre-configured calibration for either the FIREFLY cloth surface or for the hard surface. I left mine on default simply because I had no issues with it out of the box, but it is worth noting if you are experiencing maybe some tracking issues, you can try the calibration. So that's just been a quick look at the software. Overall, it looks very clean, very easy to use, so I have no complaints there, and it's good to have as much control over the Mamba as you get. So then, wrapping up this review of the Mamba HYPERFLUX, overall I really like this mouse. As I said at the beginning, it's actually my favourite mouse of the year so far. I can understand that there are downsides. Of course, it is far from cheap at £250 here in the UK, so obviously that's going to put a few people off. And other than that, the most significant issue is the fact that you have to use the Mamba with the FIREFLY HYPERFLUX if you want to use it as a wireless mouse. However, the whole point of the Mamba HYPERFLUX is to create the best wireless mouse possible, and the fact that you have to use it with the FIREFLY HYPERFLUX is only because there's no battery, thus it's lighter, which is in turn going to help people, do more flick shots or move the mouse around easier. In any case, for a mouse as good as this, considering it is cutting edge technology, I think those who really want the best would be prepared to pay. Personally, I would be prepared to pay for this because it is just that good. So overall, I can say I really like the Razer MAMBA HYPERFLUX, and if you're looking for the best of the best wireless gaming mice out there, at the moment I think it is this, the MAMBA HYPERFLUX. So I'm Dominic for Kit Guru. This has been our review of the Razer MAMBA HYPERFLUX with the FIREFLY HYPERFLUX mousepad. If you like this review, you can give us a thumbs up, you can leave us a comment below, maybe you don't think it's a good idea. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do, and hit the bell button as you go so you can get notified about all our future videos. Finally, we'd love to chat with you over on Facebook and Twitter, but until then, we will see you in the next video.